Welcome to the How to Write a Research Paper series. My name is Danielle Applebaum, and I'm an academic librarian at Farmingdale State College. Today we're going to discuss the difference between scholarly academic sources and popular sources. By the end of this video, you'll be able to distinguish between scholarly and popular resources according to the following characteristics: author credentials, intended audience, purpose, content, review process, and dissemination. Let's get started. Before we get into searching for sources for your research paper, it's important to understand that you'll encounter a wide variety of sources as you search. While you should always defer to the instructions provided by your teacher or professor, the general expectation is that as you approach your final years in high school and enter college, you'll be using scholarly academic resources, like journal articles, instead of popular resources such as newspapers and magazines. These publications differ in a number of ways, including who they're written for, who they're written by, why they're written, how they are reviewed prior to publication, and how they're disseminated. Authors and audiences. Scholarly publications are typically written by academics or expert practitioners for other academics or other expert practitioners. Popular publications, on the other hand, are typically written by staff writers or freelance writers for the general public. Think People Magazine, or enthusiasts in a particular area. Think Guitar Magazine. It's important to keep in mind that while the writers may do a thorough job researching for their articles, they are often not experts on the topics about which they are writing, and that this may lead to inaccuracies. Now you might be thinking, I found this article and it's written by an expert with a gazillion degrees. It must be a scholarly article. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but that's not always the case. So it's important to remember that each of these criteria are meant to be considered together. So if you're not sure about the intended audience for an article, examining the content, for instance, will give you a really good idea of what you're working with. We'll get to that in just a moment. Purpose. Scholarly publications exist to disseminate new advancements in knowledge or present important interpretations or investigations into existing knowledge. Popular publications exist to inform non-experts and often to entertain. Now, you might argue that to an extent, all of these resources are meant to be informative, so that's not a very good way to distinguish between them. You're absolutely right. But again, what's important to remember is that all of these categories are meant to be considered together. So when one area seems a little fuzzy, considering the source in light of another category, like content, can often clarify things substantially. Content. The content of scholarly publications differs significantly from popular publications. First, they differ in length. Scholarly publications can run anywhere between 10 to 30 pages, and sometimes even more. Popular resources are often much briefer. Feature-length newspaper stories are rarely longer than a page, and feature-length magazine articles are rarely longer than a few pages. Second, they differ in language. Because scholarly articles are written by scholars for scholars, these articles are often filled with discipline-specific jargon, whereas articles from popular sources use plain, simple language. For example, if I was talking to another librarian, I might say that my pedagogical approach to designing information literacy sessions is informed by the situative perspective. That's jargon. If I were talking to someone who wasn't a librarian, I would just say, when I teach library classes, I make sure students get realistic hands-on experience using library resources in the way they would during the normal course of their research. Third, they differ with regard to citation practice. Scholarly articles are full of citations because scholarship is essentially a conversation that authors have via research and writing. That is, you can't make new discoveries or create new ways of thinking about and doing things until you've fully understood the work that's come before. The only way to do this is reading and citing the work of others. Thus, this is standard practice in academic and expert practitioner communities. Articles from popular publications, however, do not often cite their sources. They might refer to a study or something an expert has said, but it is rare to find a popular source with a full and complete citation list. Review prior to publication. Scholarly and popular publications also differ in terms of the review processes they go through prior to publication. Scholarly publications go through a peer review process, which is extremely rigorous. Articles are submitted to a journal, An editor determines if the article might be a good fit for the journal, and then the editor sends it to 2 or 3 experts in the field who evaluate the soundness of the research, the originality of the topic, and other criteria. These experts provide one of the following recommendations: rejection, major revisions and resubmit, minor revisions and resubmit, or accept. Articles are often rejected and very rarely accepted without revisions. When revisions are requested, an article can go through several rounds of revision before publication, and it can take months or even years before the article gets published. Ultimately, the intention of peer review is to select the highest quality articles and further increase the quality of these works through the feedback and revision cycle. Popular publications, however, go through a very basic editorial review, and not even that sometimes, before they're published. Because the review processes are so limited, there's often limited room for catching errors prior to publication. As a result, you often see retractions, which are reported corrections, in popular publications. Dissemination. Finally, scholarly and popular publications differ in how they're disseminated. Because the peer review process can be lengthy, scholarly publications are published only a few times a year. Many scholarly publications publish on an annual basis only. Because the review process for popular sources is much more basic, these publications appear more frequently. Newspapers are printed daily, while magazines are published weekly or monthly. Now that we've talked about the differences between sources, we need to discuss developing a manageable topic, which we'll tackle in the next video.